All right, so today we have a file to download, transactions.xlsm. And that's just kind of a file to kind of get us going with functions. So just while you're getting that downloaded, I'll go ahead and open it up. I've already downloaded it. So you probably remember, set the Wayback Machine for, I don't know, 8th grade, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, when you first took like your pre-algebra class. That's probably where you really got exposed to the idea of a function. Who can tell me something you remember from that class about functions? So a function is just like it's an algorithm that takes in some kind of input and it puts out some kind of output. Now, the important thing about a function is kind of two things. One is that how many values does a function give you back? Yeah, it gives you back a single value. So it can take any number of inputs, and then you get back a single value as the output. And the second characteristic of functions, mathematically, for a given set of inputs, you always get the same output. It's not like, well, we ran this function today and it gave us back 27, but we ran it tomorrow and it's got the same inputs and it gave us back 32. We're not quite sure why. No. Functions, for the same set of inputs, functions will always give you exactly the same single value output. Generally speaking, that's true for functions in VBA, although there are some notable exceptions, some of which we'll talk about today. So what we have here is just some data that we can kind of practice on some of the functions in VBA. But first, let's kind of take an overview. So let me come back here to Learning Suite and just look up VBA built-in functions. Any of these should do. What's this first one? Looks pretty good. Functions listed by category. We'll skip this first one here. So string functions. We'll spend most of our time today with string functions. H&R Block, I guess it's going to be tax time. I want her to do my taxes. It's kind of like the way she dances over there. So we've got some string functions. In string, probably the first one that we'll play with today, it looks for the position of one string inside of another string. So, you've got some long string, you're looking for an occurrence of some substring in it. This can tell you, it'll tell you the position of where it finds it. Lcase, can you imagine what lcase does? Gives you the lowercase version of a string. So you give it kind of mixed case, it'll all come back lowercase. Mid, right, all these we'll play with. We'll probably even see split today, although we're not quite ready to spend a whole lot of time on split. There's a bunch of date time functions. Let's take a look at a couple of these because they're not kind of built into our example for today. So, there's one just called date, and it returns the current date. Incidentally, in most programming languages, you have to put the parentheses on, but in VBA, if the parentheses, if you're not passing it something to work on, the parentheses are optional. So I can just say date without the parentheses because the date function doesn't take any input. And it will still give me back that thing. Same thing with now. So now just returns the current date and time from the system clock. Incidentally, there's one called year, which given some date expression will tell you the year of that. Not surprisingly, there's both month and day. M-O-N-T-H. So are we in the second month? I guess we're in the second month. It's February. There's even one week day. That'll tell you that we are on the second day of the week. Is that true? Oh yeah, Monday is the second day of the week. Sunday is the first day, Monday is the second day, so it tells you that. There's even one called month name. But month name does not take a date. Month name takes a number. So if I want the month name of the 8th month, it'll give me that. Well, how can I convert the current day to a number? Yeah, the month function is exactly what the month function did. So M-O-N-T-H. And we'll pass it now, and that should give us February. So one of the things about functions is that you can certainly nest them, right? You can call a function, because a function sends back a value, you can use that as the input to another function and as to another function. In fact, if I wanted to take just the leftmost 3 characters of this, I'd say left 3, and that just gives me Feb. So I've got a function here, being called by a function, being called by a function, being called by a function. So kind of 4 levels of functions here, and you can go to your heart's content. there. All right, so what else we got? So there's some date time functions, hour, minute, even there. So that looks pretty good. So a bunch of math functions. So if you're doing something a little more scientific, you've got cosine, sine is here, square root, tangent. So kind of all these normal mathematical functions are here. Absolute value, and so forth. Logical functions, I'm not sure these are really functions. And really is an operator. It's a logical operator. It's not like you have and in parentheses, you give it two values or something that it does. Same thing with or. Yeah, for next. I'm not sure I like this site. Tech on the Net, usually pretty good. For next really isn't a function, but anyway. Information functions, kind of interesting. So we can ask if something is a date. So is date. Now I can give it a date, and this will obviously be true if I give it a date. But I can also give it a string. So is date. Let me just put a string in there, and it will be like, could it convert that string into a date? And the answer is yeah. There's one called is numeric. This one's interesting. I don't know what this is going to do. I mean, because dates ultimately, underneath, they're all numbers. But I think it's going to look at that and go, that's not a number. But if I put is numeric of now in there, oh, still isn't. I do is numeric of now, but I convert that to a double precision floating point number, CDBL, and that will be true. And the truth is, I can convert dates into numbers because dates, of course, are just a certain fractional number of days back from December 30th, 1899. 1899? Yeah, 1899. So that is how many days it has been since December 30th, 1899 at midnight. And I'll ask it again, and a little bit more of a day has gone by since the last time I asked. I'll ask it again, and a little bit more has gone by. So yeah, there's is numeric, we looked at is date, didn't we? Did we look at is date? Yeah, we looked at is date. There's is Boolean. I think. B-O-O-L-E-A-N. Maybe there's not is Boolean. Maybe we should stick to the list here. Is numeric, is null, is empty. Financial functions, if most of these are built into Excel as well, probably all of them, but your net present value, you can calculate that natively right here in VBA. There's some that are kind of built in for working with files and such. So it turns out your workbook has a path, and that'll tell you where the workbook is saved on your computer. But there's also one called dir, where you can ask for the list of files that's at a particular location. So I'm going to do this, but you also have to give it like some kind of a mask. Star.star means anything. And so here it's just giving me the first one. But if I ask again for dir without telling it, where to look, it'll give me the next one and the next one and the next one. So it's just kind of giving me the next one each time. So here's an example where calling the same function doesn't give me back the same value. So, and when I get down to a zero length string, it's gone through all of them. At this point, if I ask again, dir is going to tell me that's an error. There's none left to get on the list. So we'll play with this a little bit later in class when we're working with text files and reading through text files. So you can set the directory where you save things by default and so forth. And then there's a whole set of conversion functions where you can convert between one type to another. So I could see int. This will probably be a type mismatch of now or an overflow. Yeah, it's an overflow. Because cint converts to integer. What's the range for integer? Plus or minus 32,000. Has it been more than 32,000 days since the beginning of our date type? Yeah, but if I convert to double or a long, CLNG, then it tells me it's been 43,000 days since we've been going. Or if I can convert to double, it'll give me the fractional portion of that, right? So it's here it looks like it's rounded to get to the 72. It's actually 71.6537, et cetera. Questions? Like functions are just built in. This VBA has a bunch of functions, a bunch of stuff it can do. And so we can just call them, directly from working within our code. Okay, so let's go ahead and get something done here. And in fact, I think what I want to do is I want to start over here with things that are a little further right. This is just some data that I generated at Mockaroo or some data generating site. So over here, we've got a bunch of stuff dealing with the VIN. So column R has a VIN, and these are just made up VINs, generated VINs. They're well formed. They're just not anyone's car in particular. And so what I'd like to do is pull some information out of this. Did you know that if you knew the VIN, you could tell some other information about the car just by looking at the VIN? You can tell what the manufacturer is. If you're kind of into it and you kind of know what the codes map to, you can tell the year that the car was made, sort of. I mean, within a certain range, you can tell the year. You can tell what continent the car was manufactured on. All that information is kind of embedded here into the VIN. So it turns out that the 10th character here indicates what year the car was manufactured. And so let me just pop over here and look up Wikipedia. VIN, W-I-K-I-P-E-D-I-A. Vehicle identification number. So it tells us here, so our North American ones here, the model year is in column number 10. So that's what we have here. And then they give us a table later on here that shows how you convert. So if it's an A, that in column number 10, if it's an A, that car was made in 1980. If it's a B, it was made in 81, C, and so forth. All the way up, gave it some thought when they were coming up with this scheme, because what you'll see is that when we get to 1, we go A, almost the whole alphabet. We skip Z for some great reason. I'm not sure why. Then we get to 1. 1 maps to 2001, so that's handy. 2 is 2002, and so forth. Then we get to A. A means what? 2010. Oh, wait a minute. A means 1980. Well, it's only 1 digit, so you can't get it for sure when it was made. But I guess in this case, if you've got the car and you've got the VIN, you could look at it and hopefully you could tell the difference between a car that was made in 1980 and one that was made in 2010 by looking. What do you think? Could you? Probably most of us could. So we can't get down to for sure what the year was made, but we'll get it into a range. So why don't we start with that? So what I'd like to do is pull out, and the truth is, I think I gave this to you as some kind of lookup thing. So we've got some lookup data over here in column Z. I don't like that. I'm going to get rid of those. We'll actually calculate the model year ourselves. But I'm going to come here to, we'll start off with a year digit. So what I got to do is I got to pull out the 10th character out of the string of characters that's over here in the VIN. So let's come over to our code. We've already got things set up here to be able to loop through all of this data. So now what I'd like to do, maybe just after I print, go ahead and put a comment in here for, this is information about the VIN. So my year digit is in column W. So I'm just going to go ahead and, whoops, write directly to column W. I guess I could figure out what number that is, but I'm just going to put this column W. And that value is going to equal, is there a question here? All right, let me just kind of come and play with this by hand for a minute, and then we'll write the code to do it. So here I'm just going to print that VIN. Put it inside of double quotes. So now, oh, that's so interesting. Where did the quote go? There we go. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to get that 10th character. Well, it turns out there is a function called mid. Mid allows me to look into the middle of some string and take out some specified number of characters. Where do I want to start? I want to start at the 10th character. Where do I want to end? Well, I don't tell it where I want to end. I tell it how many characters I want to take, so just one. So this should bring back the 10th character. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, there's the 10th character. We brought that back. You know, if that was a B, it would bring back B. So I would like to take this and just use that to assign the value for my VIN. But of course, I'm not having it hard-coded. I'll be reading it off of column R. Column W is going to be equal whatever I have in column R, but I'm pulling off just a particular character. So if I run this, it should fill in all of the year digits here. And that's kind of the unusual thing about this data that's generated automatically is that they're all sequential. They're only A through F. Maybe I'll change a few of these. Oops. A few of these first ones, I'll put some numbers in. So instead of, I guess the A after the 6, I'll put this as a 1. Next one down, I'll put as a 2, maybe a 4. Next one down, I'll put as a 9. Not entirely sure I put those in the right place, so let me just run this again. And yeah, 149. It thinks it's $1. That's unfortunate. So let me come here and just change that to a number and get rid of the decimals. So that code has done the trick. I guess I don't need to be this wide. I can kind of show that up here. So that's mid. Questions here? Go ahead. Oh, question is, what's TXN? Where does this come from? And that's the sheet name, right? So if I come and look at my Explorer, we'll see that this, yeah, here it is. Transactions is the name on the tab. I don't know if you can see it right there, but it says TXN is the code name that we're referring to it by. And we'll close that. All right. So that's so far one built-in function mid. Let's take a look now at what it would take to bring the model, to calculate this model year. This is a little complicated. Let's just assume that we're starting, when we start with A, we're talking about, yeah, why don't we start the numbers here at 2001. We'll take these numbers, and then if we see an A, we'll assume it's 2010, and going forward from there. So, how are we going to implement this table that tells us about the, about how that digit is interpreted? Any thoughts? I mean, if you're going to, you've got to convert an A to 2010. You've got to convert a 1 to 2001. How are you going to do it? Go ahead. We can have one big long if statement. Yeah, or probably would use, what would be better than if? We talked about conditional execution. Say it again. A case, yeah, select case. Probably be better because we're looking at just this one character and we want to do something different based on it. So yeah, okay. That'll be one way. That's way more typing than I want to do today. So other thoughts? Maybe use your VBA, exercise your Excel, not your VBA muscles, but your Excel brain cells. How would you do this in Excel? Yeah, probably a VLOOKUP function. Just build a table that has this and you look up the value and then pull it back. That'd be pretty good, but we're doing this in VBA, so we're not going to use VLOOKUP. So let's just take a look at, and we might even stumble across a few more functions along the way. So here's what I'm going to do. So it turns out that if it's a number, right, if the value I'm looking for is a number, this is easy. How do I convert a 1 to the right year? Or any number, 0 through 9 to the right is 0? Do they have, is 0 even here? There's no 0. Okay, so anyway, 1 to 9. How do I convert it to a number or to the year? At 2000, that's really easy. So let's start off just with that. So where is, this is column Z, I think. So we're going to be writing a value into column Z. And before we do that, let's do a little if. We're going to say if, let's see, yeah, column W. We've written into column W now our single digit. So if that is numeric, there's a function is numeric. N-U-M-E-R-I-C. You don't have to yell it, though. You can speak normally, they'll still do the same thing. If that's a number, then we will do one thing, else we'll do something else. I'm not sure what the other, I'm not sure what the something else is yet, but we'll get there. So in this case, it's just going to be that the value that's there plus 2,000. Let's just see if that gives me the right year. Run that. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I got my 2001, my 2004, my 2009. Beautiful. I didn't get any of my A's or B's or C's. Maybe I'll just change some of these so I can see without having to scroll. So there's, oops. Here is A, here's B, here is C, and I'll do one more. Change this one to a D. Okay, whew. How am I going to change an A into 2010? Oh, this sounds hard. Any thoughts? Go ahead.
Is there like a numeric index for letters already?
Yes, there is. The question is there a numeric index for all of these letters? And the answer is yes. You may remember when we were first talking about variables, we came and looked up the ASCII table. Remember that everything ultimately has to get recorded as a series of ones and zeros. And so the way that we do characters, we have to store some number that represents the character, but then we have this table that maps us to the actual character. Capital A over here is 65. Capital B is 66. Well, it turns out we can do this kind of reverse lookup directly in VBA. Let's just take a look at kind of the pair of functions that does this for us. So there's one called char, C-H-R. I give it the character number that I want, 65, and it gives me the letter. You know, you want to know what 127 is? 127, oops, is that. That's kind of a funny one. Let's do 126. The tilde, I don't know where Z is. Z must be around 115. It's capital S, or lowercase s. 15, 20, X, Y, Z, 22 is Z. So these characters are there by number. We can do this in reverse with a function called ASC, the ASCII value of a character. This, now I'm going to give it a string, and what should I see for capital A? That should be 65. Lowercase z should be 122. So this pair of functions, char and ask, will let us kind of go back and forth between the numeric and the character representation of a character. So let's say that if it's a letter, we want to do something really similar here. But, so if it's non-numeric, it's got to be a letter. Then we're going to say it's going to be the ASCII value of that letter. But capital A, I have to map capital A to 2000. I have to map 65. I have to think about it here. So 65 has to map to 2010. How do I make that mapping? Looks like the difference there is 1945. So I'm just going to, instead of adding 2000 to that number, I mean, because it's already higher, right? It's already 65 there, but I'm going to go part way there. I'm going to add 1945 to it. 1945. So if it's a number, I just got to add 2000. If it's a letter, I've got to add 1945 to the ASCII value of that letter. And that then should give me the year. So B gives me 2011. C12, D13, A 2010. And then we just happen to have a bunch of A's here in a row, then a bunch of B's and so forth. So that wasn't too bad. And we got to see a couple other functions. What do we see? Is numeric, just returns true or false, based on whether the value you give it can be converted to a number. It doesn't tell you if the value you gave it is a number. It tells you if it can look at that value and convert it to a number. Is numeric. This is a string. I am giving it a string. 2, that's true. How about 2.5? Numeric or non-numeric? That's numeric. How about 0.5? How about 0 point? Numeric. How about point? Not numeric. I mean, point is kind of close to being a number, but it's not a number. Question? Oh, like TWO. Wouldn't that be great? It can figure that one out. It can't figure that one out. No, it just can't. So, yeah, it kind of looks at it. Can I interpret that as a number? And if it can, it returns true. And then we saw that the use of the ASCII value there. Very nice. Okay, let's go ahead and I don't think there's that much more to the pulling out the manufacturer. Oh, looks like I've got formulas built in for this. That might be kind of fun. So I got to. So we got a problem. What's going to happen when we get to Z? Oh my gosh, because there's no Z. Let's see, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, O. The real problem is I. Z is not a problem because there's no Z. We don't have to deal with it. Is there a Z in the future? Where is it? Yeah, I don't think Z ever fits there. They just don't do it. But the real problem with what I've just done, I didn't even really think about it until you said that. Yeah, why isn't there an I? Looks like a 1. Why isn't there an O? Looks like a 0. So they're saying, we want this to be a little more readable. So we're going to be okay up until H, but we've got a problem as soon as we get to I. So probably the best way to do this now, I'm thinking, is probably through some kind of a lookup table, because it's not a consistent pattern. We could build more ifs around it. If it's greater than, whatever H is, then subtract 1 off of it or something. That's going to get ugly really fast. And what we're really just trying to get introduced to here is kind of seeing how to use some of the different built-in functions that we have with Excel. So recognizing that that's a little bit deficient, we'll let it go and move forward. Now, this car manufacturer, we've already got some, we can kind of finish building this out because I've already got some lookups built in here. All I have to do is drop the WMI in. I think the WMI is just the leftmost 3 characters. Is that right? Let's go back here and see what Wikipedia can tell us. So here, WMI, yes, 3 characters, the World Manufacturer Index. So this shouldn't be too bad. We should be able to just put the leftmost 3 characters. That's easy. So we're still kind of in the VIN area. So this is column column V. So I'm just copying my very first one that I had. And I'm going to say column V is not the mid, but it's going to be the left. And we want, now mid takes 2 arguments, where to start and how many to take. Left just has 1 argument, it's how many characters are on the left. So that should give us the leftmost 3 characters off that VIN, and it should drop that into column V, which I think will probably fill in the other information here. Let's run this. So yeah, it looks like we've got Audi, BMW, Daimler, Chrysler, and so forth. So by pulling off those first 3 letters, we're able to do the lookups that we had here. And there was a lookup for year as well. I deleted it because I really wasn't thinking clearly about the best way to do that example. Questions? Left? Can you guess? Could you possibly guess the other one that kind of goes in this set? Left, mid, and? Yeah, right, we'll do the same thing, just gives you the rightmost certain number of characters. Truth is, you could do everything with just mid, couldn't you? Yeah, because how do you convert a left to a mid? It's just mid starting at the first character. and then how many characters you want. It's a little more work to do right with mid, but you can do it as well. All right, let's come back over here then to the first part of our table, and let's take a look at splitting apart this first name and this last name. So here our full name is provided, last name comma first name. How are we going to get at the, I'm going to split these apart? And the answer is going to take a couple of steps. The first one is we've got to find out where the comma is. So that's going to be a different function. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe do this above the VIN since it's more to the left. And I'm going to say, so this is going to be first name. For this one, I think I'm going to want another variable. I will typically declare my variables way up here at the top, and I'll do that same thing here. So dim, POS, that's short for position, as an integer. Actually, we can probably get by with byte. I don't think we're dealing with data that's more than 255 characters, so I'm going to use the byte. Byte is integers only, range 0 through 255. Why do I declare my variables up here? And some people like to declare them down kind of where they're being used. You can do it either way. And the answer is that your variable declarations, logically, they have, regardless of where they're written, when the code runs, they happen before any executable line. So when the VBA interpreter says, oh, someone's trying to run convert data, step one, it looks through and finds all the declarations and it allocates the memory it's going to need up front. And then it goes through and runs the logic. So they really do happen up here before any of the other code, so I like to write them up there. But it's just a preference. Some people like to write them, declare them more closely to where they're being used. That's fine too. So now I'm going to set my position equal. Now this is going to be the position of that comma. I got to find out where the comma is. There's a function that will tell me that, tells me the occurrence of one string inside of another. It's called instr, I-N-S-T-R, I-N-S-T-R. The order of the arguments here, I have to confess, I think is really weird. So I'm going to give it three things. I got to tell it a string that I'm looking at, a string that I'm looking for, and I got to tell it where to start looking. You know, imagine I've got some long string and I'm looking for capital W, but I don't care if capital W shows up in the first 20 characters, but after that first 20, I want to find the occurrence of that. So I can tell it kind of where to start looking in the string. Question? It is. So, but I'm just going to go ahead and use them, put them all. So I'm going to tell this, I want to start looking at the first character. That's the first one, is where to start looking. The second one is the string that I'm looking at. And that is what we have here in column 2. I'm going to change that to column B because I'd rather think about this as letter column. And then what I'm looking for. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a comma. Now this is a little bit strange because I'm using the comma to separate the arguments, but a comma is also one of my arguments. So that's why that one's inside the quotes, to make sure you don't try to figure out what that comma is separating. That's just a character that I'm trying to ask VBA to keep track of. So now I should be able to run that. Oh, let's just put it into position. For right now, so I can see that, I'm going to write that position into where I want first name to go, which I think is column C. So column C's value is going to equal position. That's just so I can look at it. We're on our way to what I really want it to be. And I'll run that. And then, does that look right? So this is telling me it's the 8th character. Let me just take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's the 8th character. How about the next one? It's the 7th character. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 7. It did it right. Here's the 10th character. Oh my gosh, 10th character. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I either miscounted or it did it wrong. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So again, it's got it right as the 10th character. So once I've gotten that, I can just use left to pull the first name off. So instead of position, I will say that I want it to be the left of whatever's in column B. Oops. How many characters do I want? Well, wherever I found that comma. I don't think that's going to be quite there, but let's run it and see how close we are. Oh, just a little bit off. What's the problem? Yeah, it's pulling that comma in as well. So what do I have to do? Yeah, just subtract 1 off that position. Oops. And there we have now a beautiful first name brought in here. Now last name, I can do last name pretty easily off that position of that comma as well. You might think that you might use the right to pull off that last name, but it turns out it's going to be much easier using mid, because mid has a little trick built into it. We'll take a look. So instead of C, I'm now writing to D, and instead of left, I'm going to do the mid. Now, mid we already saw was go to the middle of the string somewhere, start with a certain character, and then how many characters to take. So in this case, I'm going to start at position +1, and I'm going to bring back 1,000. Ooh. That looks pretty good, except I think I probably got a space. Yeah, there's a space after that. So I think I want +2. Escape. And I just give it some arbitrarily large number to say, take the rest of the string. Well, the truth is, you don't have to give it an arbitrarily large number. If you give it no number there, you'll be more than happy to take the rest of the string. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And so if I say mid, give it a position, that's where it starts. If I don't tell it how many to take, it assumes that I mean the rest of the string. And that's in fact what I do mean. And so now this should give me first and last name quite nicely. First and last name. Do I have any spaces on the beginning? No, it looks great. No space on the end or on the beginning. Nice and clean data. Questions? Okay. So the next one I've got here is phone 2. For phone 2, what I'd like to do is I'd like to see my area code done in parentheses. So instead of area code hyphen prefix or exchange, I don't know what it's called, but anyway, the area code, I do know what it's called. I want that in parentheses instead of separated with a hyphen. Ooh, there's kind of several ways to do this. And I'm going to introduce you to one that's really powerful. And that splitting apart this phone number was kind of really almost like it was made for it. So here's phone. But it's going to be a P-H-O-N-E. But it's going to be a little bit problematic because it's going to rely on something I haven't taught you yet. So I'm going to give you a little introduction with a promise to give you more details on this as we're coming. In fact, on the idea that we're omitting, I'm going to give you 2 whole days on it. It's kind of an important idea. So this is going to use the split function. So let me work in column F. So column F is going to equal what? Well, we are going to split. Column B. Let's go ahead and kind of look at split here for just a second. I'm going to split something. Why don't we just go ahead and do a phone number? 801-372-1552. 801. Now, I'm going to split that on, and the second argument is, what's the delimiter? In this case, it's going to be the hyphen. Now, the split function, I mean, so far, we've seen functions today. We've seen a function that returns a Boolean, is numeric, returns true or false. We've seen functions that return a string. Left returns a string. String, however many characters you take off the left of another string, it returns a string. This one returns, actually, what do you think it's going to return? Yeah, there's 3 different, I mean, it's taking the string and splitting it up into 3 other strings. Now, how many values does a function return? 1 value. So, but I'm telling it to split this thing into 3 values. And the answer is it can't return 3 of them. It has to return only 1. But if there was some structure that was a single structure that had 3 elements inside of it, it could return that structure. And that structure is called an array. we're going to learn how to use arrays, but not today. So at this point, what you're going to say is, split returns this structure that has in this case, three strings in it, and I want to tell it which one to bring out. I want to bring back number 1. And so by putting it in parentheses, after this thing that evaluates to the array, I can just bring back one of them. And that brings back 327. Wait a minute, 327? I asked for the number 1. Why did it give me 327? What's that? It's not the first one after the hyphen. It's a zero-based counting system. Someone at some point thought, this would be really great if we start counting at 0. And that's the way it does it. There's a good reason for why arrays start counting at 0, and I'll tell you that when we actually get to them. So if I want the first one, I would probably better off calling it the 0th one, and that will bring back that 801. And so I've got 0, 1, and 2 will bring back those individual elements. So I'm going to say split that thing, and I want to bring back, for my area code, I want to bring back, split this, sorry. This is going to be split based on the hyphen is the delimiter, and then I'm going to bring back number 0. This should put, thank you. Phone numbers in column E. Thank you very much. So column E, and we'll run that. And so now, sure enough, I've got the area code pulled off right here. Very nice. Well, now I just want to bring back kind of the rest of that string. And so little in-class exercise, use the mid function and kind of concatenate on the rest of that string. Pull it back in, Bronson. Could we store the output to an array variable? The answer is yes. And I will teach you how to do that when we get to arrays, which is after the midterm. We don't want to clutter up your minds with arrays before the midterm because they're not on the midterm. Okay, I said in-class exercise, but I didn't really mean it. Let's just do it together. I don't know, would you want to do an in-class exercise? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build this telephone number to look like this. Whoops. And then a space, and then 206, and then whatever else. That's what we're after. Let's just go ahead and do it together. All right, so I've got that, but now I'm going to concatenate onto it. Actually, this part right here is giving me the area code. So before that, I got to put the opening parenthesis. So opening parenthesis, concatenated with, and then we'll do that whole thing, and then we will concatenate on after it a closing parenthesis and a space. And then we want to concatenate on everything else after that first hyphen. So I think I like, rather than kind of splitting it 2 more times and reassembling it, I think I like the mid approach here. So let me go ahead and redefine my position here to look in column E for the hyphen. And then I will maybe bring this on to the next line. This is going to be the mid of whatever I see in column E, beginning at the hyphens position, probably +1. I certainly do. So this should be hyphen. Thank you very much. No equal involved, that's a hyphen. In my defense, those 2 characters are right next to each other there's a shadow on the top of this, all kinds of reasons. Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. I guess we can scroll this over. We don't even have to be, I guess we can't scroll it over unless we make something wider. Let's make one of these wider. There we go. Just a little bit wider. All right, so we should be able to run this now, and we should see that telephone number going. There it goes, pretty good. Uh-oh. What's wrong? The space, what happened to space? There's no space. Oh, where's the space? There's a space in the original. Who gave us this data with a space at the beginning? Ugh. Somebody who must have wanted to teach us how to trim spaces off. Aha. So, what I'm going to do, this, the space doesn't go on the whole thing because I'm putting this parenthesis. The space isn't at the beginning. The space is right here. So let me just kind of look at this. Oops. Let me look at this part of the string that I'm building right here. There's a space at the beginning of this. Ooh. And so I'm going to use a function that just takes spaces off. It's called trim. But I'm going to be very careful to wrap it just around this part right here. So trim, opening parenthesis, and then closing parenthesis at the end of that expression. So I'm still bringing back the area code with the space on the front, but now I'll be trimming that space off. We'll go ahead and run that, and then we'll take a closer look at the trim function. And that looks like it's done a great job of pulling that space out. Let's take a look at trim a little more specifically. So trim, let's see, let me go ahead and print out a capital X concatenated with trim of something concatenated with a capital X. So trouble is the spaces are kind of hard to see. So I want to put these X's on both sides of what I'm printing. And so maybe what I'll do here is, even before I put the trim in, you just put in a bunch of spaces to Nephi, seer of olden time. One of my favorite hymns. Okay, so we should be able to see that I've got the spaces before and I've got the spaces after. So now I'm going to wrap trim around this, and that's going to get rid of leading and trailing spaces. So now no space before, no space after, but the spaces in the middle are just fine. In fact, if I had multiple spaces in the middle, those would be untouched as well. Well, what if I want to leave trailing spaces but get rid of leading spaces? There's two other ones to kind of help me with that. One is called L trim, trim just the space off the left. My right space is still here. One is called R trim, trim the space off the right, leave my left space in place. What if I want to get rid of all these spaces front and back and like collapse multiple sequential spaces in the middle of the string down to a single space? VBA can't do that. You could write a function to do it. It wouldn't be easy, but you could write a function to do that. But how many of you know like another way to do it? Do you know? Yeah, go ahead. So I could replace, I could do that in VBA too. That won't work. Let me show you why. I'm going to come here, and instead of rtrim, let me throw a replace on here shortly. Replace looks at a string. I've got this long string here. It looks for some other string and replaces it with some other string. So I can look for two spaces, replace it with one space. Right, it's going to have to iterate, because what's going to happen is, oh, here's two spaces, collapse those down to one space. And then it's looking at the next two spaces, collapse those to one space, and now I've got two more spaces next to each other. So I have to make some kind of a loop that continues to do that until there's no occurrence of two spaces. We actually know enough to do that now. But surely there's someone who's like really familiar with Excel, like functions built into Excel, that know there's one just made for this. Do you know what it is? No one knows this function. I'm so glad to teach you something about Excel. I don't know very much about Excel. The truth is I know a lot about VBA, not so much about Excel. But apparently I know a little bit more than you, at least in this one area. So let's look at this. It turns out that you can, we'll come back up to this example here in just a minute, but it turns out that by saying worksheet function dot, you can get access to any of the built-in functions in Excel. You can just use an Excel function right here in VBA. Well, there's one called rand between. Let's just take a look at rand between. Rand between gives you a random number between the two numbers you specify, 1, 10. that should give me a random number between 1 and 10, a 1 and 10 inclusive. So without doing this too long, I should get a 1, either a 1 or a 10. There we go, got the 1. So there's one built in called, oddly enough, called trim. And that's exactly what trim, it behaves differently in VBA than it does in Excel. So I'm going to call the worksheet function trim, and it only takes the 1 argument. So I don't need the rest of these. And now it gets rid of all leading space, all trailing space, and multiple sequential spaces inside the string are collapsed down to a single one. So that is handy if that's what you need to do. It always seems strange to me that they had a function built in that was so common of a need that they built it right into just one of the functions that's built into Excel. I don't know. I forgot what I was trying to do. We went down this kind of long road to get here. So understand there's these worksheet functions that are really important because, I mean, don't rewrite that functionality. It's there. You can use it. Go ahead. Oh, so the question is, here we got 2 functions with exactly the same name. Why don't they do exactly the same thing? Well, we got other functions that do exactly the same thing. They don't even have the same name. They're just kind of got both problems here. And the question is why? What were they thinking when they did this? I know the answer to this question. I know what they were thinking. So Excel is developed when? I don't know. For sure in the 90s, maybe even in the late 80s, they're doing the work on Excel, and they're copying something anyway. What are they copying? Lotus 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's like unashamedly just a copy. So much so, I love this. Is this still true? Oh, yes, it is. Oh my gosh. In Lotus 1, 2, 3, when you wanted to access the menu, there's no mouse involved. How do you get to the menu up there? You get to the menu by pressing the slash key on your keyboard. So here I am in Excel. Watch what happens if I press the slash key. This came from Lotus. You know, how many of you have never heard of Lotus 1, 2, 3? Anyone here going, I never heard of that. What is that? Yeah, a bunch of you. Yeah, it used to be the spreadsheet that everyone learned. You know, that was it. Clearly well into the 80s. By the 90s, it had been replaced by other things that were kind of more friendly. But you'd hit the slash and it would invoke the menu system. I'm gonna hit the slash on my keyboard and watch what it does. It puts up all the keys that I could press to invoke menu choices up here. Oh, for page layout, /P brings up that menu. And all this kind of way of navigating menus where you do slash and then hit a couple of characters and that would take you to the function, they copied that from Lotus 1, 2, 3. And so the names of these functions are copied as well. So is Microsoft evil for doing that? How about Google Sheets? You look at Google Sheets. Have you ever noticed the incredible similarity between the names of the functions in Google Sheets and the names of the functions in Excel? Yeah. How come Google Sheets can get away with that? Microsoft copied them in the first place. No intellectual property there. And so now, so that explains why we've got the names that we have. So when they're making VBA, why didn't they keep those same names? And the answer is VBA was a port of an existing language called Visual Basic 6. Version 6 of Visual Basic just came over and became VBA. And so all of the function names that came up as a totally different product from Excel, when they're making this language, they're going, oh, what should we call the thing for random? What's it called for just random between 0 and 1 in Excel? It's rand, R-A-N-D. What's it called in VBA? R-N-D. And it's just because they grew up as totally different products and they met each other and fell in love in the mid-90s. They got married. And they're not, there's differences. And that's why. That's why they have differences. Okay. Where are we anyway? I forgot what I was trying to do. We got the phone number in there. That looks great. Oh, more about trim. Yeah, we use trim, but there's kind of some more details about trim. Thank you so much for helping me remember what I was trying to do. Okay, what else we got going on here? What else we got? Oh, street address, city street address. Anything new here? We've already talked about split. We talked about position. I think this is probably what I meant to do with split when I made this example because there's 2 commas in here, splitting it would be a little bit better. Maybe we'll come back and work on this one later. What else we got? Full postal code. Postal code. This one's a little interesting. Let's go ahead and take a look at this one. So let's pull the postal code off of this. So based on what we know already, how are we going to get that postal code off of here? Now the right, oh, just pull off the rightmost 5 characters. That is so easy. I wasn't even thinking, that's easier than what I was going to say. Let's pull off the rightmost 5 characters, put it in column K. That was so easy. Oh, probably not even worth doing. Oh, you choose the right, okay. I don't get to tell you how to look backwards to find a character. It's in string reverse, by the way, INSTRREV. Okay, rightmost characters of, oh, what column are we trying to go to? Column K. And the rightmost of column G. And how many do we want? 5. These are 5-digit zip codes. I'll run that. And it looks, wait a minute. It looks terrible. What's wrong? I pulled off the rightmost 5 characters. I dropped into the cell, and what did Excel do? Well, no, you're putting a number in here. Does it allow you to have leading numbers, leading zeros on numbers? No, that's like pointless. So I lost it. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Whew. What's that? Ah, yeah, let's look at that. That's one way. I can come here. I will teach you guys a shortcut key that you're going to love me for. Are you ready? You can go straight with one keystroke. You can go to the formatting of this Excel. It's Control 1. Control 1 takes you right to the formatting. Control 1, that's great. That's like my favorite keystroke. So I could just make this text. But that doesn't solve the problem. I still got this. Ah, that's because I already wrote it. It got converted to a number. So now if I run that again, it should keep it. Yeah, because it's text. It's all these green triangles, which is a little bit annoying, but I wonder if there's a way to get rid of those. Can I just say ignore those things? The number cell is formatted as text or preceded by an apostrophe. They give me a flag just for that. This is text. Maybe because looking at it going, this looks like a number, but it really isn't a number. It's text. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, could we just make the, could we make that formatting here that, we absolutely could. Yeah. And that's actually why I have full postal here. I wasn't going to fix the problem here. I was going to fix it here, but let me show you how we'll fix it. Rather than playing with the formatting of the column, I'm going to say column L is exactly as it was before, but I'm going to concatenate on in front of this a single quote. Oh, that looks terrible. Concatenated. I'll highlight there. That looks a little better. I'm highlighting the one single quote in the middle of 2 double quotes. Actually, you know what might be a better way to do that? What's the ASCII value? I think it's like 34, but what's the ASCII value of a single quote? It's 39. So instead of that, I'm going to put on character number 39. I don't know if that's better than single quote. That says, that's another way to say single quote. So now, even though this is formatted as probably general, let's see. Yeah, just formatted as general. I'm going to run that code. And now it is put in that leading 0, even though the format is still the same. Because when I put a single quote on the front of it, it says, oh, this is just text. And you might think, oh, you put a single quote on that number. That's terrible. There's a single quote. It's not. Watch this. I'm going to say this column equals this one. And there's no quote there. The quote at the beginning says, this is text. And when you ask for the value, I could even ask it in VBA. What is the value of the active cell? No quote. Put no single quote in front of it. Says, there's just a little trick that says, oh, by the way, this is text. It may look like a number, but it's text. Question? If you actually wanted there to be a quote in there, you're so out of luck. I think I could probably put quote, quote, 2 single quotes on the front, and that would go into 1 single quote. Who wants a quote anyway? I don't want a quote. We get enough quotes at the beginning of class. We don't need extra quotes in here. All right. How are we doing? Let's go into email addresses. We got an email and email to. I don't even know what I was planning to do here. Let's just, it's the same. Let's just, what the heck? Let's just put it in parentheses. That's what we'll do. Okay, so email. Oh, you know what? I know what we'll do. This will be fun. So there is, what is the way to do it? I'm trying to think. There's a way that you can write, like plop in an email address. But I can't remember if you put the name in the brackets or if you put the email address in the brackets. So you put, like you can specify both the name and the email address instead of just plopping the email address. You probably didn't know this. Email, name, and angle brackets. Someone just show me an example. This shouldn't be so hard. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Oh, fiddlesticks. Okay, email with name. Email address with name. I don't think so. But VBA helps almost everything, so it's worth a try. Okay, I can do the example without actually having it, be that it will work. It's either like this, me, and then in brackets, or it's the other way. Just reverse these. I guess I could just drop both of those in and see which one works. All right. Anyone, now that you see what I'm trying to do, does anyone know what we're talking about? It's the name with the email brackets and emails. Okay, so this, like this right here, that's the way we'll do it. All right, so that's what we're going to build. So we need first name, last name, and then the email address put in here. So our email to is in column N. So column N is going to equal, our first name is column C, so we got C and D. And you say it's, okay, so it's not too bad. Come back here. Is going to equal column C concatenated with a space concatenated with column D. We're getting there. Let me go ahead and put an underscore to break this onto another line. Concatenated with an opening angle bracket or less than sign. Oh my gosh. Quote, a couple of quotes and a couple of ampersands in here, and then the email address, which is in column M. Ah, that's delightful. And that looks pretty good. Oh, but it looks like I've got spaces here. We know how to deal with spaces. So around the email address, looks like I got to trim the email address. So no problem. Throw a trim on there. Run that. They're still there. What kind of evil devil spaces are those? They're like impervious to the power of trim. Oh my gosh, what is going on here? Turns out they aren't spaces at all. They look like spaces. They smell like spaces. Taste like spaces. Let's take a look at this. Let me look at the leftmost one character of my active cell. That just looks like a space to me. I don't know what's going on here. How do I find out? How can I ask what character that is? Yeah, there's a function for that. So I've got the leftmost character. I'm just going to ask for the ASCII value of it. Now, what's a space, by the way? It's number 32. But if I come here to my ASCII table and look it up, here's number 32 is space. Number 33 is exclamation point. Number capital A, or number 65 is capital A. This thing ends at 127. Oh, this picks up over here. What was it, 160? 160? An A with an accent on it? Apparently, Excel doesn't know how to make an A with an accent. What's that? Okay, now you might think I just pulled this example like out of thin air. No. When I copy your email addresses out of AIM, it comes with character 160 in front of it. I have no idea why it's there. Except that maybe Learning Suite was programmed by freshmen or something. That actually is true, by the way. We developed Learning Suite, here it's made in the CTL, Center for Teaching and Learning. And there's like one professional developer, maybe two, and a host of students making Learning Suite. But this problem is not in Learning Suite. Learning Suite does a great job. It's actually in AIM. This happens when I copy your email addresses out of AIM. Learning Suite doesn't even give me your email addresses. I'm kind of bitter about that. Is that right? Maybe, no, I think they don't. Like expressly preventing me from getting your email addresses. So, so what are we going to do? And the answer is, we're going to use that replace that we saw a little bit earlier. So trim doesn't do the trick for me. Instead, I'm going to use replace. Now replace takes three arguments. It takes a string I'm looking at. It then takes what I'm looking for, which is character number 160, and what I want to replace it with. Let me replace it with what character what? Oh yeah, I could replace it with a space and then trim it. I'm going to replace it with an X just so I can kind of see them real quick. Let me run that. So actually there was two of them on the beginning of this. And so, but I don't want to replace it with X. What do I want to replace it with? Yeah, just a zero length string. Replace it with empty string. And so now I've built that second email address kind of properly formatted. There was a question here. Why doesn't character 160 show up in Excel? I don't really have a good answer for that. So let's just see, maybe character 161 does. Yeah, 161 does, 162 does, 163 does. 159, it'll take a while if we go through them all. Wow, what is that? That looks like a period, but that's no period. Maybe it, oh, there's 249 is a little dot over here of some kind. So the truth is your extended ASCII codes are not, they're not universal. They're not standard. How many of you have ever gone on a website and like going along here and all of a sudden there's a question mark where there should be an apostrophe or something? That's the reason is because what went in there was, do they even show them here? One of those fancy apostrophes. You know, the ones that curve one way at the beginning and another way at the end, not like a single quote. And those are not part of kind of the base standard character set. And so when it got converted from one system to another, it was like, we don't know what that is. And put a question mark instead. And so this first set of 128 are all standard. These other ones, not standard. So anyway. So yeah, why 160 doesn't show up, I don't know. But it took me a while to find out why my emails weren't getting through at first. All these emails are bouncing. Look at that email. It looks perfect to me. What's going on here? Oh, there's character 160 on the front of it. Let's see. We've talked about lots of different functions. We've experimented with string functions today. We saw how to refer to, oh, one more thing, and then we'll call it good. And that is, so we have this function here called RND. Oop! We have this function called RND, which gives me a random number between 0 and 1. There's one built into Excel that gives me a random number between 0 and 1 called rand. Same thing. So you might think that I could come here and say worksheet function dot RAND, but I go right from radians to rand between. Where's rand? Did they just forget it? And the answer is no. They did it intentionally. They left rand out. And here's the rule. If there is a function that has identical behavior in Excel and in VBA, you have to use the VBA version. I think that's rude. I mean, it's faster. I'll save a couple of milliseconds. That doesn't compare at all to the 5 or 10 minutes it took me to figure that out in the first place. That's a lot of milliseconds to get to 5 minutes to understand that. They don't even give you any help. It's not like CRND function, you know, for rand here. It's just not there. What's going on? So if you're looking at a function you know is there, and it's not there, it just means it's part of VBA, and you just have to Google it and figure out what it is. Anyway, there you go. These are on the list of questions I'm going to ask that guy who invented VBA. Did I tell you I'm going to meet him? I tell you I had a student that works for him now. He comes to Utah like 2 or 3 times a year. We're going to go out for breakfast next time he comes to. That would be great, wouldn't it? I don't know if I could swing that, but, and in fact, I don't even know when he's coming again. He only comes 2 or 3 times a year. I'm going to ask him that question. He probably didn't know the answer to that question. All right. I guess that's it, folks. Thanks for coming. That's using functions. Oh, next time we get together, we're going to be seeing how to make our own functions from scratch that we can use in VBA and that we can use from a formula inside of Excel. So that's going to be pretty powerful. All right. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.